The checklist wasn't for me. I didn't think anything of the paper fluttering on the trail marker, not at first. Thought it was someone's gear checklist or a crumpled map. But when I pulled it free, I saw the header. Trail 43, cleared occupants, Ranger verified. 10 names. All crossed off. Except mine wasn't there. And I was the only one on this trail. I laughed it off, tucked it into my pack, and figured it was from a guided group. Maybe some kind of backcountry roll call left behind. But it didn't feel that way. Especially not when I reached Camp 3 and saw every tent platform stripped clean, except one. Still zipped shut. With a clipboard propped up against the entrance. Same checklist. Same 10 names. And still not mine. The ranger had said the tower was abandoned. No one staffed it anymore. No power lines ran out that far, and the solar panels were gone, ripped off during last winter's storm, he said. So why, at 2:18 a.m., was it blinking? I woke up in the tent to that stuttering pulse of red, slow and deliberate through the treetop. No wind, no sound. Just the steady wink of something watching. I thought maybe it was a drone. Or some hiker with a signal light. Until I remembered something from the map. There are no trails up to that tower anymore. The forest reclaimed the slope 20 years ago. It's surrounded by deadfall and broken stone. No one goes up there. But tonight the light blinks red. And it's pointed right at me. There's a tone wilderness radios make before a transmission. A sharp little beep-beep, like a hospital monitor starting up. I heard it crackle just past mile marker 12, right as I crossed the dry creek bed. "Stay where you are," the voice said. "You're not cleared to proceed." It was a man's voice. Firm. Official. The kind of voice that makes you freeze, even if no one's there. I looked around, but I was alone. No trail cam, no ranger post. Just pines and rock and silence. Except I didn't have a radio. Didn't pack one. Hadn't even seen one. The voice came from my bag. I unzipped it with my stomach dropping and pulled out everything. My food kit, my backup battery, even the folded paper map. Nothing electronic but my phone, and that was dead since noon. "Do not continue," it said again, this time louder. Like the voice knew I was ignoring it. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the pause after the message. Like someone was waiting for me to respond. Like they could hear me breathing. He stepped out of the tree-line like he'd always been there. No crunch of leaves. No snapping of branches. One moment I was alone. Next moment, he was in the path, clipboard tucked against his chest. He didn't say a word. He just stood there. Uniform pressed like it came from a catalog. No dust, no sweat, not even a hint of trail wear. No gear bag. No radio on his belt. No flashlight, even though the sun had just dropped behind the ridge and the trail ahead was already drowning in shadow. And his eyes. His eyes didn't blink. I watched for it. Swore I wouldn't be the first to speak. I even glanced down to see if he had a name tag. He did. Just one word. Ranger. That's it. No name. No badge number. No patch for the station. Just the word burned onto black cloth like an old brand. I took a cautious step back and said, "You okay out here?" Nothing. No answer. He raised the clipboard. On the top sheet was the checklist again. Same as before. Except this one had my name. And it was already crossed off. I don't get paranoid on solo hike. That's the point of coming out here. Just you, the trail, the sounds of birds that don't care what kind of week you had. But this morning, something was off. The birds were quiet. And my GPS, when I checked it, didn't show my path. It showed someone else's. There was a dotted red line on the map display, thin and looping. It wasn't mine. I never doubled back, and I hadn't made a circle in over 6 miles. But the red line looped around my current location like a noose tightening. At first I thought it was cached data from another user. Then I checked the timestamp. It was tracking live. And the weirdest part? The line moved when I stood still. I turned in place, scanning the brush. Trees, still. Nothing moving. I crouched, unplugged the battery, reset the satellite connection. When it rebooted, the line jumped. It was closer. Whoever it was, if it was a person, wasn't walking away. They were orbiting me. And every time I blinked, I swear I heard the faint crunch of pine needles. Not far. Just outside of seeing. The ranger station was empty. Dust on the windows, spiderwebs in the corners, but someone had come through recently. Muddy boot prints stopped at the map kiosk near the back wall. That's where I saw it. The original trail system was laminated, mounted to the corkboard. Color-coded trails, fire road access, emergency shelters. But someone had taken a red pen and added a web of new trails branching from mine. Jagged, messy lines like veins running off the map. No return arrows. No loopbacks. Just routes into deeper forest. Some led right off the paper's edge. One of them was labeled with a single word, reviewed. I looked closer. There were other notes in that same red ink, written faintly in the margins. He followed. Awaited until dusk. A no check-in required. My hand went cold. I tried peeling the map up. It wouldn't budge. Glued down tight like someone didn't want it moved. That's when I saw the clipboard tucked under the desk. This one didn't just have names. It had times. Crossed off in thick black marker. And the last one matched mine, down to the minute. I was halfway through repacking my gear when I heard tires on gravel. I didn't think anyone would be up this far. Trail access had been closed for controlled burns, or at least that's what the backcountry sign said. But sure enough, a white Ranger pickup coasted up the incline, slow and quiet like it didn't want to spook anything. Relief hit me first. I almost waved. Then I saw the door emblem. It was the old one, green triangle, gold pine tree, a coiled trail like a snake at the bottom. They stopped using that in '97 after the merge with forestry. I only know that because my brother was a ranger. They replaced it with a digital leaf and a state seal. No one's used the triangle logo in 25 years. The man inside didn't look at me. Didn't signal. He just parked across from the ranger station, left the truck running, and stepped out, clipboard in hand. Same guy. I wasn't sure. Same stare though. Same no blinking. I called out, "Are you with search and rescue?" He didn't answer. He just slid a pencil down his clipboard, turned it toward me for a second, and I swear, I saw my name again. Only now it had a second word next to it, amended. He got back in, and drove off without headlights. By dusk, I'd given up trying to find the southern trailhead. Every route I took bled into thick brush or twisted back on itself. My compass spun twice today. So when I saw the fire ring, the flat tent pad, and the raised bare pole already in place, I gave in and called it home for the night. Someone had clearly been there earlier. There were boot prints in the soil. Not mine. 3 distinct sets. One was big. The other 2 were smaller and moved side by side. But the strangest thing? They were all fresh. No leaf buildup. No water stains. No erosion from the wind that had blown through all day. Just clean, new track. Like they'd been laid minutes before I arrived. Inside the fire ring, the ashes were warm. A tin cup hung from the bare pole. A can of beans sat unopened beside it. 3 sitting rocks were pulled up to the ring like chairs waiting for a show. I set up off to the side. Didn't touch a thing. But when I woke up later, stomach growling, I noticed something. The can was gone. And someone had taken a bite out of an apple one didn't bring. I was breaking camp at first light when I heard them, 2 male voices echoing through the trees about 20 yards north, just out of sight. No gear sounds. No movement. Just sharp, clipped words. "You logged him too early. Wasn't my call. His time changed last night. You didn't confirm the overlap. You know that's..." Then silence. Not fading voices. Not retreating footstep. Just silence. I grabbed my pack and crept toward the direction, carefully placing each footfall between roots and leaf. The woods were still damp from last night's fog, and every sound felt amplified, except theirs. I reached a small grove with a downed tree. Empty. No rangers. No tracks. No boot prints. But something was there. Hanging from a branch. A ranger's patch, new style. Thread frayed at the bottom, the velcro still intact. Below it, stuck to the bark with a knife tip, was a scrap of checklist. One name. Mine. This time, no cross-through. No amended. Just 2 words scrawled in red ink beneath it. Do not approach. I made it back to the trailhead by sundown, legs trembling, pack half unzipped from the last blind scramble through bramble and switchbacks that no longer matched my map. The parking lot was empty. Except for one thing. A clipboard. Propped against my driver's side mirror. I froze. Didn't touch it. From where I stood, I could already see my name written on the top line. Not at the bottom like before. Not halfway down. Top row. Circled in red. And next to it, in tidy uppercase. Already processed. I reached for the door handle lock. I hadn't locked it. My keys were still in the ignition. I leaned down to look through the window. The driver's seat was empty. The keys were gone. And so was my pack from 2 days ago. But on the passenger seat sat another clipboard. Face down. Waiting for someone else to turn it over. And now for our second story. They sent a new ranger to cover the fire watch, but the previous ranger never left. They flew me in by chopper. No roads led to Fireline Ridge anymore. The last landslide washed out the access trail 6 years ago, and the station never bothered to rebuild it. I was told it was a temporary shift, 1 week max, just to cover fire season while they rotated in fresh equipment. The tower was intact. Barely. Peeling paint, metal stairs whimpering under every step, and a rot smell under the floorboards like old sap gone sour. But the weirdest part wasn't the building. It was the logbook. Sitting right where it should be, in the drawer under the radio, neat and dry. With an entry already written that morning. Today's date. Time stamped just before I landed. Wind SE visibility poor. Smoke column spotted 14 degrees north-northeast. Holding position. Still observing. But I hadn't written it. And I was the first one up here, right? I turned the page. Yesterday's entry said the same thing. Same handwriting. Different signature. Ranger Ellis. They told me Ellis was never found. Disappeared up here over a decade ago. Declared dead. So why was he still logging entries? Night came heavy and fast up on Fireline Ridge. The kind of dark that feels pressed against the windows, like the trees below are waiting for something. The tower radio was old but functional. Static when I tested it at check-in, with the occasional pop of interference. I figured the antenna needed brushing or a stronger line of sight. But around 2:44 a.m., it changed. First came the hiss. Then the click, a mic keying from somewhere. Not mine. Then a voice, low and warped. Ellis. Pause. Ellis, do you copy? I froze. The signal wasn't mine. No one else should have been on this frequency. This tower wasn't even listed on the active roster anymore. It was considered legacy infrastructure. Ellis, this is Ridge. Your report is overdue. The voice was calm. Routine. Like someone running an old script. I grabbed the logbook, flipped back 10 years. There it was. Ellis, this is Ridge. Your report is overdue. Word for word. My stomach nodded. Then a final transmission crackled through the static. Stop using his name. And the tower lights flickered out. The sun cracked over the horizon the next morning like it had something to prove. Fog still hugged the valley, but at least the radio was quiet, for now. I brewed instant coffee and went back to the logbook. Curiosity. That's all it was. I wanted to see how far back Ellis had supposedly been writing, how many days, how many fake entries. I expected maybe a week of forged reports. Maybe 2. But the further I flipped, the deeper the unease drilled into my spine. Page after page. Backdated. Same handwriting. Same signature. Every single entry claimed perfect wind readings, fire weather indexes, and northbound smoke columns from sectors that haven't existed since the old district lines. Then I saw the date at the top of one page, August 3, 1972. The ink wasn't faded. The pen stroke felt fresh. And the page was clean. Too clean. I flipped forward. August 4, 1972. Wind from WSW. Tower secure. Still observing. August 5, 1972. No fire movement. Requesting delay in reassignment. August 6, 1972. They haven't checked me off. I remain. Each entry ended with that same sentence. Over and over. Do not descend. I called the main station that afternoon. Told them about the logbook. The phantom entries. I even sent a photo of Ellis's handwriting and the 1972 date. The supervisor on the line sighed like he was tired of hearing ghosts. He said the tower had been officially decommissioned after the fire line jumped containment in 2014. That's why there was no active ranger posted. What about Ellis? I asked. Silence. Then. He never should have been assigned up there. That was a paperwork glitch. I pressed. So who was signing the logs? Who's been transmitting on the old channel? More silence. Then. There is no tower radio. We pulled the guts years ago. It shouldn't even have power. I laughed nervously, eyes drifting to the corner console. The red indicator light glowed steady. But it does, I said. And last night it. That's when I noticed the clock. 3:33 a.m. Again. The beacon on top of the tower began to flash. A slow, deliberate rhythm. Like a signal. Like a countdown. That's when the call cut out. And the air inside the cabin went cold. At first light, curiosity led me to the stairwell base. Broken metal treads curled upward like rusty ribbons, but something more unsettling caught my eye, a pair of scorched leather boots, kneeling at the bottom step as if someone had paused mid-climb. The leather was charred black, stiff around the edges, but the toe caps were split open, revealing something absurd. Two small, wet bones that glistened like marrow under a microscope. I knelt beside them, stomach rolling. There should be no way for bones to remain so moist in the dry mountain air. My gloved fingers hovered over the boot's top, but I couldn't bring myself to peek further. It felt like a trap, like the boots were waiting for me to confirm something I didn't want to believe. I stood and glanced upward. The tower stairs vanished into shadows, each landing higher than I dared imagine climbing. The floors above must be consumed by rot and age, yet these boots were fresh. No ash or cinder, only splintered rubber and that odd sheen on the bones. A memory I refused to admit surfaced. Ellis had reported a flare-up near that exact stairwell decades ago. They said it was a minor ember from old equipment, but these boots hadn't rotted away in 50 years. They looked worn within weeks, like someone had trudged down after stepping through flames that shouldn't exist here. I backed away, heart hammering. When I looked down again, the bones were gone, no blood, no charred fragments, nothing but the cracked leather. The wetness was gone, too. In its place, a single word burned into the leather's heel, scorched and obscene. Watch. The stairwell's chill clung to me long after I retreated to the radio room. I jiggled the intercom switch, expecting only silence or static. Instead, a distorted, crackling voice poured through the speaker. Who lit the line again? I froze, hands half raised to shield my ears. My mind raced. No one was supposed to be watching this tower. No active fire lines snaked through these ridges anymore. The last controlled burn was plotted out years ago. Still, the line of words repeated, as if on a loop. Who lit the line again? I keyed the mic. This is Ranger Cole. No active burns reported. Who is this? Silence, then the same warped echo. Who lit the line again? I pounded the desk with trembling fingers. My only reply was a low, humming static until the voice came through once more, slower this time, deliberate. They'll come if you don't answer. My blood ran cold. Answer what? Nothing but static. Finally, the intercom clicked off. I unbuttoned my shirt, pressing my ear to the speaker hole, listening for footsteps, radio clicks, any sign of a human presence. All that greeted me was the faint hum of the generator and the distant rustle of trees. Below the tower, the forest lay calm, no smoke, no heat signature, nothing to suggest a line was lit. Yet the question lingered in my mind, echoing like a warning. If something really lit this ridge, what or who did it for? I hadn't slept. Couldn't. Not after the voice on the intercom. Not after seeing those boots vanish like they were never there. Just before dawn, I flipped open the logbook again, thinking I'd jot down the sequence, document the transmissions. Maybe it'd keep me grounded. But the page had already been filled in. Same page. Same date. Same pen. But not my handwriting. It was nearly identical, almost like someone was trying to copy my style. Only the phrasing was off. The structure was too clean, too rehearsed. The first line said, "No smoke observed. Fire line clear." The second line, "He has accepted his shift." I flipped back a page, just to see if I had maybe scribbled something out of order. But that one was mine. I remembered writing it. Wind from the east. No threats visible. Radio malfunctioning intermittently. Then below it, a second entry. Same date. Same time. Re-established contact. Subject compliant. My chest tightened. I flipped to the beginning of the book, trying to trace the pattern. And there it was. Dozens of days. Dozens of entries. All in twos. One I recognized. One I didn't. My breath fogged the glass as I looked up through the window. The tower beacon pulsed once in the gray morning haze. The radio hissed. And the intercom keyed itself on. "Do not alter the log." The smoke crept in slow, clinging to the forest like it had nowhere else to be. Not the thick black of a blaze. This was paler, sparser, like breath on winter glass. I grabbed the binoculars and scanned the tree line. No flames. No heat shimmer. No movement in the canopy. But down in the hollows, where the fire lines once ran, I saw them. Not people. Shape. Tall silhouettes walking steadily between the trees. Upright, smooth, deliberate. Not stumbling like lost hikers or bounding like animals. They weren't following the old trails either. They cut across them. Marched in diagonals. Passed through rock and brush like they weren't really touching anything at all. And they were coming closer. One stopped, just short of the old weather station ruins. It tilted its head. Just a fraction. Like it knew it was being watched. The smoke thickened. My vision blurred, the lens misting as the shape moved again, this time with others flanking behind it. 5, maybe 6. All spaced evenly apart. None carrying tools. None speaking. Just approaching. As if drawn to the tower. I stumbled backward and nearly tripped over the base of the generator. When I looked again, the smoke was gone. The trees were empty. But the door at the bottom of the tower creaked open, just an inch, and someone or something started climbing the stairs. The backup phone was never meant to ring. It was a rusted rotary line hardwired to a repeater miles away, one of those relics they kept around in case the radio failed completely. No one used it anymore. So when it rang, sharp and shrill in the silence, I nearly knocked over my chair. 3 rings. Then silence. I stared at it for maybe a minute before lifting the receiver. It clicked. Then a voice, calm, composed like an office worker calling about missed forms. "Ranger Cole. This is Ridge Op. Your replacement has returned." I swallowed hard. "What are you talking about? I'm the replacement." The voice didn't pause. Didn't correct me. Just said, "The one you replaced is back. He wants his shift." My hand clutched the phone tighter. "Ellis." Silence. Then, "Please verify his reentry in the log. You'll find his signature beneath yours." I dropped the phone, heart hammering. The logbook still lay open from earlier. I flipped to today's page. My entry was there. And underneath it, dated 10 minutes ago, was another. Elegant. Controlled. Ellis. Returning. Resuming watch. The ink was still wet. The intercom crackled again. "You can go now." I didn't even finish packing. I just shoved what I could into the duffel, not caring if my shirts were folded or if the emergency battery was secured. I slung my radio over one shoulder and headed for the exit hatch, 2 stairs at a time. The door wouldn't budge. At first I thought it was jammed. Humidity, rust, the usual suspects. But it wasn't stuck. It was latched from the outside. I threw my weight against it. Nothing. "Hello?" I shouted through the slot. "I'm still in here." Silence. Then, faintly, a thump from the base of the tower. Then another. And another. Not a knock. A step. The creak of iron bolt. The shudder of wood groaning under weight. Someone, or something, was ascending. Not rushing. Not cautious. Just climbing. Steady. Confident. I looked around for anything to block the hatch. My eyes landed on the logbook, still open to today's entries. Ellis's final line now had a note scrawled next to it, added in handwriting that wasn't mine. Ranger Cole processed. Exit rescinded. The floorboards trembled underfoot. One more step on the staircase below. Closer. I backed into the corner, heart pounding. The stairs creaked. And then, a knuckle tapped the trapdoor. Just once. Like it was politely waiting to be let in. And now for our third story. A search team was sent to find missing hikers, but each day the headcount increased by 1. They called it a high-priority recovery mission. Not rescue, recovery. A week earlier, 3 hikers disappeared somewhere between Marker 17 and the riverbend in Blackroot Gorge. No distress call, no tent remnants, no dropped pack. Just gone. We were 6 total, 2 rangers, 4 volunteers. Camped at the trailhead and moved in by foot, spreading wide on day 1. That night we counted off before bed. 6 voices. 6 shadows by the fire. Roll call complete. On day 2 it rained. Hard. We found a scarf snagged on a pine root. Faded red. Looked promising. That night the camp felt tight. Like there were too many bodies huddled beneath the tarp. I dismissed it. Fatigue. Shadows playing trick. But when I called roll again, just to be safe, we got 7 responses. No one laughed. No one looked confused. They all just stared at me. Waiting. Like I was late to my own meeting. I tried pointing people out, asking for names. I couldn't finish. Because, halfway through, I realized I didn't recognize the guy sitting beside me. Gray coat. Standard gear. Face like static in a dream. He didn't blink. "Who are you?" I asked. He smiled. Said nothing. And the next morning, he was gone. But now there were 8 packs at the fire pit. Day 3 fog rolled in early. Covered the low trails like a spill. We split into pairs. Standard protocol. Me and Maddox took the left flank. She's new, but sharp, and didn't ask questions when I told her to keep her radio on. We'd gone maybe 2 miles when I froze mid-step. Across the ridge, just past a leaning cedar, I saw movement. A man in a ranger jacket. Same build. Same boot. Same patchwork tear on the right sleeve. I waved, thinking maybe it was Fletcher doubling back. But the man didn't wave back. He just turned his head slowly, tilted at a sharp, unnatural angle. Like he wasn't curious. Like he was checking for recognition. I stepped closer. That's when I saw he wasn't holding anything. No flashlight. No canteen. And no clipboard. We always carry them. 4 logs. 4 verification. 4 processing field note. He just stood there, arms loose at his sides, watching me watch him. Maddox called out behind me. I turned, split-second reflex, and when I looked back, gone. Not a snapped twig. Not a crunch of boots. Just mist. And a faint trail of footprints leading away. Same tread pattern as mine. Day 4. We were supposed to pull out. But no one wanted to admit it. Not with the footprints, not with the headcount warping every night. Even Maddox had stopped arguing. We just kept moving forward. That's when I noticed the clipboard nailed to the inside of the trailhead gate. It hadn't been there before. Or maybe it had, and none of us had dared check. I flipped the top page. Names. Dozens of them. At first, I assumed it was visitor logs. People who'd come through this section, hikers checking in for safety. But the names weren't right. Not in the wrong handwriting way. In the don't exist in our system way. I cross-checked every single one in the satellite roster later that night. None had permit. None matched known personnel. Some had no last names at all. Just things like a Wren followed, a Lachlan refused, a Heidi twice entered. Then, near the bottom of the page, under a smear of moisture, Ranger Maddox, pending review. I showed her. She stared at it for a long time. Then, with her voice barely above a whisper, she said, "I've never used my last name out here." And still, it was spelled right. Down to the accent. The next morning, the list had 8 new names. One of them was mine. We were done. 5 days in, we finally agreed to call it. Even the volunteer named Arlo, who'd been the most eager, had stopped speaking entirely. He just nodded now. At everything. Like he was waiting for an order. We set up the comm tent and booted the satellite relay. Fletcher keyed in the call. "Base, this is Search Team Bravo requesting immediate evac. Coordinates follow. Please respond." Static. Then a click. A moment passed. Then, a child's voice. Soft, clear, playful. "He already checked you." Everyone froze. Fletcher keyed in again. "Say again, Base?" "Confirm contact." Same voice. Only now whispering. "He already checked you. You're not on the list anymore." I lunged for the power, yanked the cable, pulled the unit free. But the voice kept coming. No power. No signal. And it was still talking. "Don't run. He's behind the line." Arlo dropped his pack and bolted into the woods. We didn't follow. Not because we didn't care. But because when he disappeared into the trees, we all saw it. A hand, pale and too long, reached out from behind a birch tree. Not to stop him. To welcome him in. We abandoned the search at dawn. Didn't bother calling it in. Maddox was shaking too hard to speak, and Fletcher hadn't said a word since Arlo vanished. We packed up what gear we hadn't already left behind and made for the fire road. When we reached the ranger truck, it was unlocked. Keys still in the ignition, untouched. We climbed in, 3 of us now, and peeled out. No one asked which direction. Any direction would have been fine. Just away. But the dashboard had other ideas. The GPS booted up without prompt. Old unit, clunky interface. Black screen, green letters. It blinked once, then showed our location. Right at the trailhead. Then a red bar appeared across the top. Route incomplete. Fletcher tapped the screen. Maddox tried resetting the unit. I put the truck in gear and drove anyway. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Then 45. Every turn we made, every fork we took, looped back. Same downtree. Same gouged bark. Same overlook with the cracked binocular scope that hadn't worked since 2015. I checked the GPS again. Same message. Route incomplete. Then a new line flickered underneath it. Check-in required. I slammed the brakes. We were right back at the start. Only now there were 4 packs in the bed of the truck. None of us remembered loading them. We tried walking after that. Left the truck behind and followed the creek that cuts south along the ridge. It was the only trail left that didn't echo underfoot like the rest. The sound of water felt real. Grounding. Until Maddox spotted something glinting between 2 mossy stones. She reached in, pulled it out. A battered ranger badge. Bent. Scratched. Stamped with mud and time. She turned it over, and her breath caught. Fletcher leaned in. The nameplate read, Ranger H. Bell. I knew that name. So did Maddox. So did Fletcher. Ranger Bell had been pulled off duty the day those first hikers went missing. He wasn't even scheduled to be in the forest. The report said he took a personal day, family emergency. He wasn't anywhere near Blackroot Gorge. Only now we were holding his badge. In a place he was never meant to be. We looked at each other, wordless. That's when we noticed the water had stopped flowing. The sound was still there. The babble of stream and ripple. But the water. It wasn't moving. It just hovered like glass poured into shape. And inside that stillness, beneath the surface, the reflection of the badge showed a second line of text. One that wasn't etched into the metal, but visible only in the mirrored creek. Reassigned. In progress. We camped again, though none of us slept. The forest didn't darken that night. It just got dim, like the light was afraid to leave completely. Around 2 a.m., I walked down to the edge of the creek to splash water on my face. The surface was still unnaturally smooth, more like obsidian than flowing stream. No ripples. No insects. Just perfect mirrored black. I leaned in. My reflection leaned back. But not quite at the same speed. I tilted my head slowly. It followed, just a hair late, like it had to watch me first, then decide how to move. I blinked once. It didn't. My stomach flipped. I stepped away, fast, and it stayed in place. Then it did something I didn't do. It raised its hand and waved. Just a small flick of the fingers. Friendly. Deliberate. Then it turned around. My reflection. My exact figure. It turned and walked away, vanishing into the blackness below like it had somewhere else to be. I staggered back up the hill to camp, shaking. When I got there, Fletcher was gone. No sound. No warning. And the water where I'd just stood? Now it flowed. Like nothing had ever happened. Except I could still see a wet boot print, matching mine, heading back into the trees. The old fire shelter was abandoned decades ago. Half its roof caved in. The moss-covered sign on the door still read Ranger OPS, Temp Field Base. But Maddox insisted we check it, said she had a feeling. We stepped inside and were met with the smell of mildew and dust-soaked paper. Filing cabinets rusted into place. A cot with a collapsed frame. And against the far wall an old laser printer. Beige. Burned on the side. No way that thing works, I muttered. And then it hummed. Click. Word to life. Maddox jumped back. I nearly tripped on a broken chair. But the printer, long dead, long disconnected, began to print. One sheet. Just one. It slid out slowly, curling forward as if hesitant to show us what it held. I picked it up. At the top. Checklist 43B RE check all below. Then the names. Ours. All three of us. Plus Arlo. Plus Fletcher. All in bold type. Each with a small box beside it. The boxes weren't empty. Each was filled with a tiny symbol. Not a checkmark. Not an X. A small spiral. Tight. Black. Endless. At the bottom, below the spiral, one last line had printed in a lighter ink. Finalization in progress. Please remain where you are. The printer stopped. The forest fell still. Maddox and I didn't speak for hours. We just sat beneath what was left of the roof, too afraid to sleep, too exhausted to keep moving. By morning, we forced ourselves to hike out. No path looked familiar anymore. Every marker had rotted. Every trail curved back on itself like a snake eating its tail. Then, without warning, we stepped out of the trees, and there it was. The ranger station. The real one. Base camp. Lights on. Flag fluttering. We stumbled up the gravel walk, relief choking us like a flood. I ran to the door and slammed my fist against the glass. It opened. And out stepped a man in a flannel jacket, boots 5 seasons out of date, hair overgrown and sun-bleached. He stared at us like we were ghosts. "You made it," he whispered. Maddox stepped back. "Who are you?" He opened his hand slowly. In it was a folded paper, crisp and white. The same checklist we'd seen a dozen times by now, but this one had a date. Tomorrow. My name. Her name. Arlo. Fletcher. Bell. And his. Brett Alton returned. I knew that name. He vanished in 1999. Pulled off a trail near Bluff Rim and never came back. Presumed dead. But here he was. Alive. And holding tomorrow's roll call. "They never checked me off," he whispered. "They just started over." The radio was on again. Someone must have turned it back on after we returned. The light blinked green now. Calm. Routine. We sat around the table while Alton stared at his own name like it had betrayed him. I keyed the mic. "This is Ranger Cole. Search team returned. 2 survivors. 1 found." I glanced at Alton. "Unknown condition." The line crackled. For a second I thought I heard wind. Then a faint buzz. Then a voice. Not male. Not female. Just dry. Like static was learning to speak. "Cole. Maddox. Alton. Received." My blood iced over. I hadn't given our names yet. Checklist restored. Loop complete. Process verified. Maddox stood, backing toward the door. "That's not base," she whispered. "Previous states recorded. Files merged." I snapped off the radio. Pulled the plug. Ripped the battery. It kept talking. "We're not lost." Alton grabbed the checklist and stepped outside, hands shaking. "We're overwritten." I looked at Maddox, but she wasn't looking at me anymore. She was staring at the wall behind me. And when I turned, there was a clipboard nailed to the paneling. My name, her name, his name, all circled in red ink. And beside mine, in jagged script, "Returned for reassignment."